Good morning and welcome to Sutherland Church of Christ. We are glad that you are joining us today. It is Memorial Day weekend, and so we will be remembering those who have given all to serve our country. We're also going to be celebrating Foster Care Awareness Month today, and so we've got some special guests here to join us. As we look into the future, next week we will be honoring our graduates, and so we want to encourage you to bring a card for them. We have 5 graduates that we're going to be honoring, and Brendan, our youth pastor, is going to be giving a special message for them. So we hope that you'll be back to join us. I want to let you know that we have postponed VBS for now. We will make decisions on that as the time comes, but it will not be the first week in June. And so look for updates as the summer draws near as to what our programming is going to look like. And so we want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. Let's go ahead and join together in worship.
And 10,000 times 10,000. They encircled the throne and the living creatures and the elders. In a loud voice they sang, "Worthy is the Lamb who was slain to receive power and wealth and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and praise." Then I heard every creature in heaven and on earth and under the earth and on the sea and all that is in them, singing, "To him who sits on the throne and to the Lamb be praise and honor and glory and power forever and ever." So when we come together as a body to worship our God, we have to remember that it's not just our own voices that are singing praise, but every time we offer praise to God, our hearts and our voices join with all the saints above who don't stop proclaiming, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." So the first song we're going to sing, "Be Enthroned," might be a new one for some of you guys, so join in with your voice when you feel comfortable to do so. But until then, as we sing, think about lifting up your heart with all the saints who have come before and all who will come after us too. So come, let us worship our King.
We've come to join Your love is stronger, your love awakens, awakens, awakens.
others. Your love makes the darkness tremble, God. You are light, and there is no darkness in you at all. God, your love awakens our hearts, makes us yearn for more of you. God, sometimes we don't understand your love, or it's hard for us to understand how much you love us. It's hard to trust that sometimes, but when we realize we don't need to understand God, we just need to sit in your love and let that love grow us, God, and stretch us, shape us, and mold us. So God, would you help us to sit in your love, help us to soak it into our hearts, help us to completely surrender to your love, God. In the name of Jesus Christ we pray.
As a church, we try and follow the scriptures to do what it compels us to do. And one great thing about Jesus' preaching is he always has a mandate in mind. He wants to move people into action. As a church, we try and be compelled by that. Whether it's the idea that we go and make disciples, whether we love one another. We try and be compelled by what the scriptures are telling us to do. Today our topic and our theme is going to be looking at foster children. And we're going to look at what the scriptures have to say about orphans, about those children who are vulnerable, those children who are in need. And so this morning I invite you, we're going to go through a few passages of scripture as to what God wants to teach us about the most vulnerable. In the scriptures we find that God defends the orphans. Psalm 10, 17 and 18. Lord, you know the hopes of the helpless. Surely you will hear their cries and comfort them. You will bring justice to the orphans. Psalm 146, 8 through 10. The Lord loves the godly. The Lord protects the foreigners among us. He cares for the orphans. Jeremiah 49, 11. But I will protect the orphans who remain among you. God doesn't just have a heart for the orphans, but he expects his followers to have a heart for those kids as well. We are to help orphans. James 1:27. Pure and genuine religion in the sight of God the Father means caring for orphans and widows in their distress and refusing to let the world corrupt you. Isaiah 1:17. Learn to do good, seek justice, help the oppressed, defend the cause of orphans, fight for the rights of widows. We want you to know God's very serious when it comes to orphans. Exodus 22, verses 23 through 24 say, if you exploit them in any way, and they cry out to me, I will certainly hear their cry. My anger will blaze against you, and I will kill you with the sword. Then your wives will be widows and your children fatherless. We have a God who cares very much about how we treat those who are helpless, about those who may not have as loud of a voice. And so we're going to be talking about foster care today. May is Foster Care Awareness Month, and I've invited some friends here to join us. And so first we have Cheryl Ellis, and we are glad that you're here, Cheryl. Cheryl and Dave you might recognize from church. They've been attending with us and sharing and fellowshipping with us. You notice them in their large family, and it's been a great joy to have them here with us. You might even remember that her and Dave were here a few years ago talking about foster care, and it was great to have them here and share in that as well. The reason why I've asked Cheryl to come back is because she has a great passion for this and a lot of experience in this, and so she's going to be helping us to interview some great friends of mine. This is Aaron and Cheryl Weinberg from Kearney, Nebraska. And Aaron I have known forever. We grew up in the same Sunday school class and same church, going to church camp, and then off to Bible college together, where Aaron met Cheryl and brought her back to my home church, and they have raised their family there in Kearney, and I get to see them when I head back, and I get to see Aaron on stage playing and leading worship, and it's a great privilege and honor to have you guys here with us today, and I'm guessing there will even be some people from Countryside who are going to see you online as well. So before we dig into your stories, I want to talk a little bit about the need for foster care, and this goes open to either side. Maybe if somebody's willing to tell us just a little bit about the need for foster care in America, here in the Midwest. Are there kids in need?
Absolutely, I'll say. I did look up some Iowa statistics just before we came on here. And here in western Iowa, just the western service area, so it's basically the line right that touches Nebraska, so we're almost to God's country. And about 3 counties in, there were 879 kids who needed a foster home last year in that space that had to look for a new foster home in 2019. And of those, I think it was like 180 something of those were teenagers. So that's where my passion is. I'll try to not step on my soapbox too much with that. But yeah, almost 1,000 kids just here in the Western Service area needed a foster home last year.
Well, before we go too far, let's maybe break down some terms so that everybody can understand, because adoption and foster care, sometimes these all get intermixed. And so maybe for a moment, Cheryl Ellis, could you just clue us in? Are fostering and adoption, do they always happen together? Can you adopt without fostering? Can you foster without adopting?
Yes, yes. Yeah, you can have, in Iowa, you can either have an individual foster care license or an adoption license, or what they call a dual license. So you can be open to both. It doesn't always happen one way or the other. About 50% of kids who come into foster care are reunited with their families. So those kids get to go home and get that family back together. So it's important to keep those kids in mind. Not every child who goes into foster care is adopted or needs an adoptive family. But in the middle of that, the way I like to think of it is like being engaged or married. Like when I say yes to a kid to come to my house, it's like we're engaged. I'm going to give you everything I've got. I am committed to you. You are in my home. That's the foster care piece of it. But once an adoption happens, it's just like you're married. You go to the courthouse, you sign the papers, you get an actual new birth certificate with your names on it as their parents, which is a really emotional thing. I'm sure you guys can talk about that. So the foster care is just the engaged period. Adoption, you have to divorce to get out of that. It is a legal action at that point, and they're yours forever. So.
Okay. Well, now that we kind of got a little bit of a baseline, Aaron and Cheryl, would you want to share just your story? Tell us about your family. Tell us how you met your kids, when you decided to foster, when you decided to adopt, all those. If you could just share, I'll open it up for you.
Yeah. So like you said, John, we met at Nebraska Christian College. We were young, 2003, got married in 2004, and then we were quickly we had kids. We had actually Cheryl's sister's 2-year-old boy, not even, what would it have been?
September. We would have been married 9 months, and he was 2 and she went to boot camp, so we got him for about 6 months.
Yeah.
We were pregnant at the time.
Yeah.
We got pregnant 3 months after we got married. God's plan. And then our daughter was born the day before our 1-year anniversary.
Yeah.
And
So kids have always been, on our heart. We love doing youth ministry and stuff like that. But then, let's see, it would have been probably 2007. I had to think for a second. When Cheryl got pregnant with our second, and there was a lot of complications with that pregnancy, and Cheryl even ended up having a stroke because of that pregnancy. And so, long story short, they're both healthy and living, and you wouldn't even know that there was a stroke. Most people are like, oh, what? But because of that, every pregnancy after that would be labeled high risk. And so we kind of decided, well, we're done having kids right now. And so, God put it on our heart through a couple situations in church, and just he had been working on Cheryl to do foster care.
way before he was working on him.
Way before.
I had to
yeah.
pray for over a year to get him, because I wasn't going to sign those papers. I wasn't going to fill out his part of the papers until he was ready, because I figured this was something we had to do together.
Yeah.
It couldn't be
The
just
papers
one
for
of us.
training, yeah.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we there was a girl in our youth group in our church that her dad came to us because we were youth group leaders, and he said, hey, would you be willing to take her into your home and have her, live with you guys, because they're going to ship her off to Omaha otherwise. And so we're like, well, absolutely. And so we talked to the local agency there, Compass Christian organization. It was great. They pumped us through the fastest training they probably could have done. And so, but then the crazy thing is we didn't end up getting, her place in our home. They found somebody in Kearney, which was great. But that was in October, November-ish.
Mm-hmm.
And then, in December, or in January, we got our first placement. And we were 29 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And she was a 17-year-old girl. So it was pretty crazy.
I
But
was finishing up nursing school. He
Yeah.
just switched jobs.
It was a big
pretty
year.
interesting.
and then, so since then, we've had several different placements. All except for the ones that we adopted have gone back with their, parents.
Yeah,
So,
a huge goal is reunification for the kids.
yeah.
That is the main goal, and adoption in foster care happens when reunification isn't possible. But they give the parents chances before they move to that process. But yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I was trying to think. We've had probably, I don't know. I was trying to think 20, 25 kids placed with us, and then we've done respite for a ton of other kids. So we probably I've had at least 50 kids in and out of our homes, close to that, since 2014.
And then in 2017, right?
Yeah.
Am I remembering that right? We had the opportunity to adopt 4 of the kids that we had
A sibling before.
as a placement. And so we adopted them, and they've been with us ever since. They're Weinbergs now, like you said. We went to the courthouse and did the whole thing. So it's been awesome. God's been growing us, totally growing us. It's changed our, it's strengthened and changed our marriage even. It's changed and strengthened our parenting. And so it's been sanctification at its best. So, yeah.
We're still working.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been, it's had its ups and downs. And so the first child that we got was 17. She lived with us for about 6 months, and then she went on her way, and she still keeps in contact with us today. She's the only kid that we've had that we really keep in contact with, that because she can do that. But even the other day, I just got a message from her saying, "Happy Mother's Day, I miss you guys," and we try and get together with her and see her sometimes. And so there's beauty in a lot of it.
Wonderful.
Oh, we should probably say we have 9 kids
Yeah.
all together right now. We have 2 biological kids, we have 4 adopted kids, and then we have 3 foster kids. So we've got a variety of things in our home. But
So just for clarification for everybody watching, do you have to have a 15-passenger van in order to do foster care?
no, ours is a 12.
Oh.
12. No, you do not.
Because I start adding up the numbers in each of your families, and I'm afraid that we're over 20 and there's just no coming down. So
It's only 16, right? You have 9, we have
Yeah.
7, so
Yes.
we
No,
could
you don't
fit in
have
a 15 passenger van almost.
yeah, but then you add up the 4 adults.
No, it doesn't have to be, and really I go back to for that one child,
Yeah.
especially the one child needs a parent. There are a lot of kids on the waiting child list that need a home with 2 parents and no other children. So one child is absolutely needing someone like that.
And it's on a case-by-case basis. It's whatever you feel comfortable with, you say yes or you say no. You have an option in so many different things.
Wonderful. Well, you brought up an interesting point that wasn't something I had in the questions, but you talked about respite care, and anybody wants to explain what respite care is for those listening?
A respite care is just giving a break for foster parents.
A much-needed break.
A much-needed break. In Iowa, it's 24 days a year, so that's about a weekend a month that you can have the kids stay somewhere else so that the other family, the original family, can get a break. But in order to provide respite care, you have to be a licensed foster family. So that's a big ask because many foster homes are typically full. And if we're not full, then it's hard to find those respite families. So you can, in Iowa especially, I think you can still do it in Nebraska, you can be licensed and just do respite. Honestly,
you don't
that's
have to
where
be
we are
licensed
right
in
now.
Nebraska to do respite. You just have to have a background check now.
Okay, so Sioux
But-
City people, go get a background check and do some respite. But yeah, in Iowa, you do have to have the classes and be a licensed foster family. So that's a huge piece of what people can do. And if you're a snowbird, that's something that I really pitch for older couples who like to spend the winters away from here. If you have summers where you could take a kid for 2 weeks while someone goes on a vacation or goes to a family wedding, that's a huge asset, something that you can give foster families.
It might also be something, if you're not ready to take the step to say, you know what, I think I'm all in on foster care, but you might be interested in it,
Yep.
to start with respite care. And
That's what I tell everybody. I'm like, oh, just do respite, it's fine.
Don't tell them the rest of that. They actually have 6 kids. And honestly, we're at a respite place right now too. Our quiver is full right now. And so that's what we've told our licensing workers. We just want to do respite right now. So
okay.
that's an option too.
Well, let's move on to a few of the questions that people might have. We talk about the fostering and adoption. Who can actually foster? Who can adopt? What's it take to be able to do this?
There is a licensing process, like I mentioned. I actually teach the classes, so I know a little bit about that. It's a 10-week course. Actually, in Iowa now, the mandate is from the time that you inquire about becoming a foster parent until the time that your license can be in your hands has to be less than 100 days. So everything that the state does on their end happens in about 3 months. And then you take the class over a course of 10 weeks. Actually, right now might be a really good time with social distancing being a requirement. You might be able to take the classes from home on Zoom. Just saying. Might be a good time.
Yeah.
But it's, pass a background check. It's people that you would trust with your own kids are people that we want to trust with our foster children.
And anybody, like, you could be single, you could be married, you can, whatever. My sister is a foster parent in Missouri, and she is single, and she had 2 placements. She just got another placement. So she has 3 boys that she has in her home. So really, anybody that can pass a background check can really do it and all that, as long as everything works out and they seem to be fitting.
Over 21.
Yeah.
But that's it.
Knowing kind of both your stories, you got into it for somebody you knew. Is that usual, typical?
I wanted to do it before that child, before they asked us about that child. I always wanted to have a big family, and then after we had 2 kids and I had a stroke, I was like, well, I wanted to have more kids, but he's a little baby about it, and he's like, no.
Or wiser.
And so I was really trying to push him, and I realized I had to back off, but I wanted to do it because I was telling somebody, well, we really want to adopt, and somebody had mentioned, in Nebraska we have this thing called Nebraska Heart Gallery, and it is a website that is just foster kids who are waiting for an adopted home. And so they have them on there, and you can inquire about them. You have to have a foster care license to do that, but so you don't really have to know anybody at all. You just have to know somebody who kind of tells you that that's there, and that you have to know about it, and then you can do it. You don't have to know anybody, like a specific kid.
Maybe if you'd all be willing to share a benefit of fostering, something that you talked about it growing you. Is there any specific instance where you're like, I was pushed, or my faith grew, or what experiences have shaped you and changed you by fostering?
I think for me, it's really helped me see, I think it's Ephesians that talks about God adopted us into His family. And it's just a perfect picture of what Christ has done for us, And so it's really changed my perspective on that word, even, just the word adopted. And seeing that that it will grow you, that it will be something that really stretches you, that it will be something that you maybe aren't ready for at times in foster and adoption. But the thing is, God is going to use that to grow you. And I don't have a specific time, but I think that's really where I've seen for me that it's really grown us, in our marriage, and then even me just as a believer as well.
I don't know, I just think about the foster kids in an aspect of like being able to come into a home and learn about God, because a lot of them that we've had in our home have no clue about who He is or anything like that. And so just being able to tell them and be like, adoption is throughout the Bible. You've got Moses, and you've got Joseph, and you've got like all these stories of people who are taken care of Even Jesus was adopted. You know what I mean? Like, there are so many stories of all these adoption things happening, and you could say, look what they did. You know, like God took care of every single one of these people, and He's going to take care of you too.
I'd say it's probably the expansion. Every time you are going to have another child, you think there's no possible way I'm going to have enough love or time, or definitely not enough time, or food or clothing or those sorts of things to have another child, and you always do. And that is just overwhelmingly abounding when you're talking about massive numbers of children. Because there are specific things that ways that you relate to this child or that child, but the expansion, you just had no idea you had so much capacity for love until you're stretched to that point.
I actually wrote that down in my notes when I was kind of thinking about this, that there's no limit on love. And that each and every one of these kids, our bio kids have seen come in and out of our home so much. And I can't tell you the joys and the stories and the smiles that they have on their faces every single time that they see something that reminds them of them. Oh, do you remember when this kid was here and they did this? Or, oh, do you remember when we went to the park and we saw this? Or, do you remember when they went back home and we met them at the park and we stayed there until it was complete dark? We couldn't see each other. It was like over an hour, and our families just connected. After they went back home and were reunited with their family, like just the amazing, like the way they touch our lives. In foster care and adoption, a lot of people are like, oh, they're so lucky to have you, which is kind of actually an offensive thing to say in a sense, because like, oh yeah, they're so lucky that they got removed from their home and put into a different home, and it's a question out of being naive, like just not knowing the whole thing, but those kids, it's a bittersweet thing to be able to come into a home. Yes, they come into a loving home, but they also have to be separated from their family. And so it's really not that the kids are blessed or are lucky that they have us, but that we're blessed to be able to love them in our home and the time that we have them. And so just being able to show them that love, and your heart is never full enough. There's always room, it always grows.
Wonderful. Well, let's say a person is sitting out there watching this morning, and their heart is breaking for kids. They hear that there are hundreds of kids that are in need, that maybe they could fill that role. And they're wondering about fostering and adopting. What's their first step?
Ask the question. In the Western Service area that I just mentioned, LSI, Lutheran Services of Iowa, is your connection. They're who is going to connect you for your licensing and training. So it's lsiowa.org. There will be some supplies in Pastor John's office and here on Sunday morning if you need a brochure, that type of thing. But all of the information that you really need in order to pursue licensure is at lsiowa.org. That's one place to start. And start asking questions. I mean, you probably know someone who is a foster or adoptive parent. You probably know someone who maybe even has been adopted or was a foster child. Ask questions.
Pray.
Yeah.
Pray about it.
Well, that kind of segues into where we're going next, and just as a church as a whole, not just an individual, but the church as a whole, we need to consider how we can fill this mandate to care for vulnerable kids. God obviously has it on His heart. He wants us to have it on our hearts. So how do we do this? I want to make a little comparison to missions. Just as when you look at the mission field, some people are called to go to Africa, to go to India, to go across the world. We are all called to missions. Some are called to leave and go. Others are called to send and support. And so for us, we're already doing this in other areas of our ministry. And I think it's important that we start to adapt and look at that when it comes to something like this as well. And so I want to take a few minutes and just look at how we as a church can support those who are adopting, those who are fostering, the ways that we can be there for them. And you mentioned prayer. And I think that's so important that we need to be praying not only about our own hearts, but praying for others' hearts as well. I think it's important that we pray for broken families to be healed, because a big part of this is because there is struggle. There are things like alcoholism. There are things that are plaguing families and tearing them apart. And so that needs to be a part of our prayer life, is that we are praying for these families to be healed. We also need to be praying for families with loving homes that will open them up, because there are an awful lot of churches. You talked about that number in Iowa of kids. There's more churches than that. And if one family from each church would step up in that role, it's taken care of. And so we need to be praying that the right families, that these families that know and love Jesus will step up and take this mandate seriously. Open their homes. I think we also need to be praying for these children. I think this is obvious. We don't need statistics to know that this has been a struggle for these kids. That they, as you were saying, Cheryl, it's not just that they're lucky. Like, they've gone through a lot. And so we need to be praying for these kids, praying for them right now and their futures, that God will guide them, that God will be there with them. In addition to prayer, I think we can also be supporting these families that do this. Families that open their homes to foster and adopt have a lot of obstacles. I'm sure both of you would agree. There's plenty of obstacles to overcome. And so I'm going to hit on just a few practical ways that we can help, and feel free to jump in at any time.
I hope you start with prayer, because you have to pray for these foster kids.
There you go.
Because honestly, when foster kids come into a Christian home, Satan doesn't want them there. He is going to do everything he can to mess it up, because he doesn't want these kids coming. He created got into these families and helped them have this chaos that they're ensuing, and so he doesn't want those kids to find Jesus. So when they come into a home and they're introduced to Jesus, he's doing everything he can to still mess it up, because he doesn't want them there. And so Satan hits really hard in foster homes, and it is difficult, it is hard, but it's worth it. I'm not going to sugarcoat everything, because it isn't a walk in the park, and Jesus told us that. Jesus told us that living here on earth, we're going to be set apart, and everything we do is going to be more difficult. We're going to be persecuted, and that's not, foster parents aren't left out of that. The families are still attacked by Satan all the time, because he does not want those kids learning and having that seed planted in their heart. He's doing everything he can to throw up those weeds, and to just get rid of, choke out that seed so that it doesn't ever grow.
So in addition to praying for them, I think we can also, we talked about providing respite care. And for those of you who, you're not ready to foster, but maybe you're saying, I could go through the training. I could do that, and, a weekend, a month type of thing. Make it so they can go, that they can get away, so that, they have somebody to turn to in that situation that you can support.
And I don't know, in Nebraska, we didn't have to pay for training. Is it also free in
No,
Iowa?
no,
So
there is no,
good. I thought that would
no
be good.
financial requirements, just the time.
Yes.
And it's huge. I do not in any way want to say that that's a small investment, but yeah, just your time.
And I would say too, when you're talking about respite, that's huge for these families that are doing the foster care. They're in it, 24/7, for months at a time sometimes without respite. It's huge for whether it's, the I don't want to say original family, but the bio family, to kind of just regroup and kind of get back together. Even for the adults to just, the parents to come back and say, okay, we need to just refocus. We've been kind of in survival mode for a while, so we just need to come back. So respite, even if it's for, like we said, a weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday type of a thing. Even sometimes for us, even just a couple hours at night so we can go out, have dinner or whatever. But yeah, respite is a huge thing.
Next, I put dinner on you, and so some of you, you have time and you can go through that. Others, maybe you don't have time, but you do have finances, and you could, hey, find out what this family likes to eat. Treat them to pizza. Treat them to whatever it is. Just line it up with them and say, hey, can I bring over food for your family on this? Just tell me what you like, and we'll take care of it. If you could take care of even just every once in a while, providing can make a real difference.
And I'm gonna say it's such a blessing in those times, those days that somebody gives a foster family a meal is gonna be their hardest day, and it's gonna be what they needed to be able to see God moving in their life. Like, they're gonna be like, oh, that was such a God moment because this day was so stressful, it was so hard, and I don't have to cook. It's going to bless them in so many ways.
And I mean, just for example, because some of the stuff that you don't think about that maybe a foster parent has to do all day, like there was a while where we had, I think, 3 different schools that you had to run around, get kids from, take them to different activities, and so coming home and then food's already there, it's a huge blessing. It's good.
I'd say to piggyback off that, or maybe to even enforce that, treat a new foster placement as you would a new baby in your church. When a mom has a new baby, we all want to come see the baby for one thing, but we all shower her with gifts and food. And if we just look at a foster placement as the same type of thing as, hey, they're adding to their family, this is a great opportunity to step in. Now, some families, that may be a lot of times, and so you may not be able to do that every time. But that can be, if you look at it through that lens, it's just like a new baby.
And I was going to mention something with that because when you have new foster placements, you have to get everything ready for them. Sometimes they don't come with anything but the clothes on their back. So maybe you need a new bed, or you need a new, I don't know, anything. We had 6 kids before we got these 3 new kids, and we're like, we need more beds. Like, all of ours are used that we've already gotten. And so we had the finances to be able to do it, but kind of like you said, and how you were comparing this to missions. I've always been told, one of our, we go through Compass, that's our organization that we go through, and one of the guys who owns it, he would always say that foster care is an invisible mission field. And so just like you would support a missionary, being able to do all that kind of stuff, ask them, what do you need? You have these new kids coming in, do you need anything? So we decided that, we could financially do all of the stuff that was coming in at that time. We were fine at that time, but I wanted to make sure, because not everybody can bring kids into their home. Not everybody is meant to bring kids to their home, and not everybody can do it. And if you're not meant to bring kids in your home, that is fine, because there are so many other ways that you can support and help. Like you said, like getting food, or all these things we're talking about, helping them get rides places, anything like that. They can. We asked our church. We said, we really need some bedding, and we really need pull-ups. We've got one kid we already are. We need pull-ups for, and then we've got a new kid coming in who needs pull-ups. And so maybe some waterproof mattress covers and some bedding and just little things, because I wanted the church to be able to step up and help. Not because I wanted to force them to, but because they don't know our needs unless we're telling them. So sometimes it's our responsibility as foster parents to reach out to the church and say, can you help me here? Because I think sometimes I can be very prideful. It was so hard for me to call my pastor and say, hey, do you guys want to help us in this area? Because it's just so hard. So that would be a huge way of just asking them, what do you need? And not just, we were talking about this, not just asking once, because sometimes they might be fine at that time. Or it might just be like, oh, I really don't want to burden them, and so I'm not going to say stuff I need. So continually bugging them, because I'm a prideful person, and you're going to have to ask me like 50 times before I'm like, yes, I do actually need your help. I just didn't, and sometimes we don't know what we need. And so, or even sending them an encouraging card and saying, I know this is hard and you're doing great. Here's a $5 coffee gift card. Just say, you need that. But, so.
Well, I think you raise a good point, and something for us to be thinking about as the church is how we minister to those families. And maybe you're hearing this today and you're not the person who wants to foster, but you're saying, I could lead the foster ministry within our church. I could be the one to say, you know what, we have a few families that are fostering. How do we serve them? How do we make sure that they are supported, that they're feeling the respite care, that they have what they need for a new placement. And maybe that's you, or maybe you're just a person who's like, I don't want to head it up, I want to serve on that team. I think that these are real things for us. And so maybe that's what God's laying on your heart today too. I want to encourage you, if it's either of those things, to come and talk to us as a church as we explore what this looks like, as we try and support the families within our community who are taking care of these vulnerable children. As we close, I just have 2 more questions, and for both of your families. First, I want you to share something you did not expect when you started fostering.
Just one?
Yeah.
I think I didn't expect, and I've talked about it a lot, but I didn't expect for this to grow me spiritually. I didn't expect for this to grow me. I thought it was going to be kind of one of those things, like a social justice thing. I was just going to be helping, and it would just be something that's good and we should do, but it's really grown me and matured me a lot spiritually, and I didn't see it coming.
Yeah. I would say I didn't expect the impact that these kids would have on my life forever. I thought I was going to bring these kids in and I was going to help them and we were going to come and we were going to save them and make them better and help them with everything. No, that's not how it works at all. So just the impact and how much they have grown me and taught me, and just the love and the patience and compassion. You don't have to already have patience and empathy and compassion. God helps you learn that through doing foster care. I don't have that stuff. And so through them, just the compassion that they leave an impact on your life forever. You don't forget them.
I would say the thing that surprised me most is the relationships with the rest of their family. Seeing a mama's heart after her child has been removed and getting to minister to her. Or having, my kids have, I don't even know how many grandparents, all of my children have. Grandparents and aunts and even siblings that didn't come to our home, but the siblings became a part of our family. I think that was probably the most surprising part, and so that's just an extra gift. That's just bonus. That's just God showing off.
I was going to also say, we didn't expect to have older children. We went into it thinking we're gonna have the young children. We're not going to do older children. Most people, when you adopt, people tell you to adopt an age order. Well, we really haven't done that. Yeah, we messed that up completely. They have all these things, but then when we got through training, we're like, there is such a need for older kids that people just do not understand. Everybody thinks that the kids are troubled and that you don't want them because they're already set in their ways. No, there's such a need for it. And we have had tons of older kids. We actually haven't had too many younger kids. We've had maybe 3 or 4 under the age of 6. And it's a blessing. It's just such a blessing. I mean, you don't have to change their diapers.
That's a win.
Well, I'll end with one more question. What's been the most rewarding part of foster care?
I think I've said that. The kids.
Yeah, I think for us, and obviously this isn't an every time situation, but to see and we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but a couple of the kids that have come in to our home, they have so many questions about who Jesus is. They have questions about, who is he? What should I do with him? And a couple of the kids we've got to lead to Christ, and it's been that tops everything, I think. And so just so rewarding to be able to have them sit down and ask these questions, and because obviously we're taking them to church with us, we're taking them to youth group and stuff like that, and so they're going to be asking questions, and so being able to expose them to who Jesus is and what Jesus says we should be is very rewarding.
As he was talking, that reminded me, I think one of the most rewarding things is being able to see the kids go back home and be reunified. I know most people say, I couldn't do foster care because they're too much, send them back home. But you should love them enough to support them in the time that they need you and be able to send them back home. Because if they're going back home, more than likely, it is so much healthier than it was before. And we have seen kids go back home, and we've got to see how much better the parents are. They were taught skills that they didn't have before, and sometimes the kids are removed because of a generational thing. Their parents are in foster care, and their parents are in foster care, so they were never fully aware of how to actually raise a kid and to be a parent. And so when they kind of get their kids removed, they get these supports and these helps along the way. And they even get foster families sometimes to be able to support them. We have always been in contact with bio parents, like you said, and stuff. And so they get these supports and they can see where they can grow and become better parents. And we have seen kids go back into a home much healthier. That doesn't mean they don't have struggles. I mean, we have struggles in our home. But it is so rewarding to see them reunified with their family, because that is the goal of foster care.
I was going to say something much like that.
Sorry.
No, you said it way better than I would, because I was going to talk about seeing a change in their family tree, seeing a change in the next generation. I have the opportunity now, I get to be a grandma, which is super awesome, and I can see that those kids are being raised with those skills that were learned because the foster care system worked for that child. And so I think that the most rewarding is getting to be a grandma.
Well, thank you so much for being here and joining us. If you are thinking about what this means for you, take serious those ideas that we had, those mandates that we passed along. God takes it seriously, and He doesn't just say, He doesn't just say to do these things because willy-nilly. He expects you to take action, and so we as a church, we all have a place and a call to take action. Be praying about what yours is, what area you can serve in, what way you can make a difference in these families. Thank you for being a part and joining us this morning. Thank you for being here to worship with us today. We hope that you have been touched by the testimony, by the sharing, and we hope that it has spurred you on to action. Thank you once again for being with us. We'll look forward to seeing you again next Sunday. God bless.